the past almost 1 month, we have been going on our way towards our profession. So highly technical sessions and all, almost 30 to 40 sessions we have held, and we have traveled too far in our way to our profession. And here comes the envy to pull us back. See, there is some other thing which is your destination, and you should not always mind only on your profession, and there is much more to it. And there can be no better person than Mr. Envy to say that. See, his contribution to the legal world is well known, and his contribution to this spiritual world, many of us may not be knowing. The way he has been giving lectures on a daily basis, sharing with all the people, and we may not be able to listen to them, all of them, but whenever we find time, we hear. And sometimes I feel very happy because I can't say that I am a very pious person. I just mind my work and I go on do my work. And after listening to one of his lecture, I realized I was not wrong. And today also you will be touching the topic, I think, Karma Yogi. So once you concentrate on your work, that is also a form of a bhakti. So that is also a form of a bhakti. That way he was giving one lecture, and I felt very happy on seeing that. And today, we were all, especially our youth and middle-aged people, we were all looking to the Western world and adopting all the Western practices and all. And the Corona has started a very big lesson. So now everybody is turning back. So whatever be our old custom, what is there in our scriptures, now the entire world is turning back and looking towards India, because all these things have been taught to us long back, and we have only forgotten all those things. So now to take us back to our old glory, I request Mr. Envy to kindly proceed and take us to our old glory, and also guide us in our path. Which path is correct, or we have to tread both the path together, or only one path. So give us a proper direction for our future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Natarajan, sir. Venkatraman, sir, before you start, just a couple of announcements. So as we all know that this session is not a typical webinar or something. So end of the session, we can have a small discussion round provided if the time permits. So when we start that round, you can raise your hands in the app, or you can just send a message in the group, and thereafter we can start. Venkatraman, sir, over to you, sir.
Mala Sudha Kumbha Vibodha Mudra Vidyavirajat Karavarijata Apara Karunya Sudhamburashim Shri Sharadambam Pranatosmi Nityam. My dear well-wishers, yes, it's a different topic, but yet it's addressed to the same people with whom we have all traveled and grown together for several years. Two aspects: God and work. Is God work, or is work God? And it may therefore prompt us to know, to some extent, it is very difficult to explain what is God in, say, half an hour or 1 hour, but still, a layout is very important for us to conceive. That there is something which is beyond our comprehension. We may call it God, we may call it nature, we may call it system. You call it in whatever name you want. There is no need to call it in a particular way or a style. And there is also a way that you need not call it equally. Now, how do we understand? Is there the quest? Supreme Court says there is a quest in the human heart to know who is our maker and how to go there. This is exactly the observation of Supreme Court. So, is there a way to see? I see you, you see me, we see so many things. But we are talking about something which we don't see. We don't perceive through our senses. We don't feel. So then how do you understand it? That's the orbit in which we need to necessarily place ourselves. For which, let us take one simple example. All of us as human beings, this is common to the human race. Therefore, we can take that very clearly. As a human being, we live normally in any one of the three states. We call it as the waking state, or when we are about to sleep and we are gradually getting into our sleep, what we call it the dream state, and finally the deep sleep state. Had a good sleep, yeah. That's what we say when we get up in the morning. Now, in our waking states, four things work in conjunction all the time. The mind, the intellect, of course, the prana, which we, unless we breathe, we won't. So let's say, if we can say even five, no problem. So the mind, the intellect, then the sensory organs, namely eyes, nose, tongue, ears, touch, and the organs of actions, which are again five in nature: legs, hands, the excretory organ, sexual organ, five organs. When we are awake, they always work in conjunction in one way or the other. How does it work? Our senses, namely eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touch, it connects with this universe, something which is common to everybody. And whatever I'm trying to say, it is common to the human race, not specific to any particular individual or a group of individuals. So we connect with the universe. So these sensory organs draw impulses from the universe, gives it to the mind. The mind processes it, then gives it to the intellect, and the intellect directs the organs of action: hands, legs, head, mouth. It says, please do this. You can check it up yourself. All the four work in conjunction at some point of time. So this is going on and on and on and on. So two things are very clear in the process. We as individuals get connected to the whole world in some way or the other. Only then this interaction happens. The sensory organs are giving the inward inputs. Processing happens at mind and the intellect level. And the output happens through the organs of action. Now tell me, eyes can see, but eyes can't hear. Ears can hear, but ears can't taste. So each sensory organ can perform only one function, the ascribed function. But we don't have 5 different blocks in our body. The perception of ears goes to experiencer A. The taste goes to experiencer B. The sight or form goes to experiencer C. We don't see it that way. Everything gets collected in one place as an experiencer. It's all interconnected, even though the organs can perform only one limited function. So ask that question now. Who is that experiencer? First question. Can you say I is the experiencer? You can't say, because I can't hear you. Can you say the tongue is the experiencer? Tongue can't see. So the organs, both sensory organs and the organs of actions, cannot be called the experiencer. You will immediately jump and say, all of us, and it's simple, it's mind. Mind is the experiencer. Intellect is nothing but a refined portion of the mind. So both together are the experiencer. It's such a difficult question. If that is the answer, you will ask the next question. When you go to sleep and you are in a dream state, the organs of actions and the sensory organs lie dormant. The mind and the intellect are very active. So one thing is clear, Sensory organs can't be experiencer or God, nor the organs of action, because in a dream state, they don't function. They lie dormant. In a dream state, only the mind and the intellect functions. Then you can say, see, I got the answer. That's why I said it's mind. So we go to graduate to the third stage. If you say it is mind and intellect, when you get into deep sleep, when you get up in the morning, you say, oh, what a wonderful sleep. Adichu pota mari thunginampa. How many times, thousands and millions of times you would have said in our life. Now, in a deep sleep, our mind and also our intellect is lying dormant. So all the four which we have, or prana works, prana of course functions. All the four lies dormant in a deep sleep state. But breath has no consciousness, all of us know. Now tell us, who is the experiencer? When your mind is dormant, when your buddhi is dormant, you get up and say, I had a good sleep. Who is asking you, who is making you say, I had a good sleep? Therefore, there must be somebody other than these four to say, you are sleeping and you had a good sleep. So somebody has been watching this. Otherwise, how do you recollect it? Because these are the tools we have with us. So the question is, therefore, all the four cannot be called the experiencer. So ask the next question. Did you have the same experience previous day? Yes. Previous week? Yes. Previous month? Yes. Few years back? Yes. Does all of you have the same experience? Yes. So I am born on a particular day and I die on a particular day. Somebody is born on a particular day. They say, all of them say that, yes, this is continuous. This is happening continuously in everybody. So you can't say it is A for him and B for, it's the same. When we say we got up and had a nice sleep, it is the same reflection we convey. Therefore, there is something which has been in existence always. It was in existence yesterday. It will be in existence even after 1,000 years. Now, the second quality all of us have is we are a prajna, consciousness. We are all very conscious people. We are able to assimilate every damn thing. So who is able to recognize this consciousness? That's one quality. And more importantly, the third most important is take the smallest of being to man, to human being. All of us want to live happily forever. Happiness is something common. Everyone wants to live happily. So joy or ananda is one quality. So the experiencer has three qualities: existence, which is eternal; consciousness, which is eternal; and joy or ananda, which is eternal. Now, what does this, okay, we are not able to see him or see her. You say all this. Now, at least at a perception level, we have to agree with you, but we are still not able to see. Just understand it this way. Let's assume this exists, consciousness and ananda, as some power A or character A, whatever you may call. See, all of us are human beings. All of us have abilities. I have one ability, you have two different abilities, somebody has 10 different abilities. Each one's ability vary. So, this existence, consciousness and joy also has an ability inbuilt to it. What is that ability? The ability to create using the potency. So can we say Natarajan or Muthu Venkataraman is different from their abilities? No. Muthu Venkataraman is known along with his abilities. So it's not different from Muthu Venkataraman. So this ability of Muthu Venkataraman which we call it as this three attributes, has the ability to create. How does it create? All of us are very familiar. Our minds are all having three states: the soft states, the aggressive state, and the dull state. All of us travel day in and day out within these three states. What we call it sattva, rajas, and tamas. So this ability, which we call it as Maya, which is nothing but the potency of this existence, when it hits a pure plank of purity, what we call it sattva, it emerges as gods. When it hits a combined plank of sattva, rajas and tamas with impurity of more of rajas and less of tamas, it ends up as various human beings like each one of us. And when it is dominated by tamas or dullness, it becomes the various objects in this universe. How does this get created? The potency first creates space, what we call it akasha, which has one quality called sound. This akasha produces air or vayu, which has two properties, sound and touch. This vayu produces the third one, what we call it fire or agni, which has three properties: sound, touch, and form. This agni produces water or apas, which has four properties: sound, touch, form, and taste. And the water finally produces this earth, Mother Earth, which has all the five properties: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. So these are the basic components for creation, through which this whole universe in multiple millions, crores and crores of combination gives rise to crores and crores of items, materials. When it happens in the human body, it creates three states: the physical body, which all of us are seeing, then the subtle body, where the breath, the mind, and the intellect, all the three are together. And finally, what we call it, the astral body, the body which is closely connected to what we call it as the existence. So I think at this stage, if we start, then it becomes a discourse on something else. At this stage, we should consolidate to know a few things. Do you want to know something beyond you? You keep asking any number of questions, any number of times, you will end up with one answer. There is somebody who is experiencing within your body, whom you have not connected with, contacted with, or come in touch or realized it. That is a fact. You can accept, you can deny, but that proposition is based on the fundamental premise: he or she or whatever form is able to identify you when you sleep and say next day morning you have slept well. This exists everywhere, and it creates with following five basic components, and this five basic components keeps multiplying in millions. Now, therefore, ask a question to yourself. Is not Supreme Court right in saying every aspirant or a believer tries to go in search of that which is created? We can dwell at, see how do these 14 worlds get created in the same combination. Earth is in the middle. You have 7 lokas above it, 6 lokas above it, and 7. We're reaching on Brahma Loka. And if you go down and down and down, you reach Patala. 14 worlds get created only in this combination. So the point is, are we as human beings, having been born as a human beings, if you have the inquisitiveness, if you have the curiosity to know who the maker is, then the process is taught. You can find them. Each religion has its own definition of God, its own definition of creation, and says, if you want to know, there is a possibility for you to know. Therefore, it is something to say that it is unknown, it can never be known, may not be right. Two, because it is not known now, it does not therefore exist, may not be right. There can be people who say, I don't believe. That is justified. It may exist, but I don't believe. That's completely justified. So, but to say that it does not exist at all, that should be your belief, that may not be right. So, how do you know it? Scriptures say you have to go to those texts to know it. You can't read history, you can't read biology to know it. You can't be doing law to know it. Then an objection is raised. Look here, then it's not necessary for us. We don't have time. If everyone has to sit on this earth and only read a text, don't say human beings are born only to read those texts. It looks patently absurd. They are justified in saying so. They are right. So it is not that you should, once you are born, you should take the text and start reading and then understanding, and then. That's not how it goes. There are 4 steps to progress. Put in two, they are actually only 2 steps, coupled together. One step, which says you can reach and try to know these texts and try to know this truth, provided you do your work properly. Therefore, there is a relevance. Are we interested to know it? Yeah, you can know it. You can very well know it by doing what you have been doing it for day in and day out for years. That's the first assurance they give. You can do it. So work. The second, which goes along with this, is those who are interested, who have time, and who have the mind, and who have the interest. You can offer a prayer to that form or formless. Some religions have form, some religions do not have forms, but may not have idols or idolatry worship. But all religions in the universe will have some text or two, something which is tangible. To say you access this, then you can start climbing from there. It's a stepping stone, it's a guidance note or two. So you can either perform karma or you can perform bhakti. Both tools are available for you to progress in life. To know that truth, ultimate truth. You don't have to do anything. Do any one of the two. Any one of the two, if possible, both. Okay, all that is fine. By doing this, how will I know who is waking me, who is watching me in my sleep? I don't understand that. That's very, very, very justified. By doing my work as an advocate properly, how do you say I can find out the person who is telling me that I had a good sleep? I don't see the connect. They say, this is the process. You cannot know this, who this person is, till such time you are connected to this universe with your own way of thinking and interpreting this universe. This is my connect. I know it. I will interpret it this way. If you keep resorting to that mode, which you are entitled to, one as a human being and as a guarantee under the Constitution, you may not be able to know who this experience is. That's all. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine, justified. If you want to know, then you must prepare yourself for these apparatus. So, what do? You say you can know it by doing work. Yes, you can do it by knowing work. How to do the work? That is explained. Your work has essentially three components. Every work, take there is in God's kingdom, there is nothing called menial work. This is a great work. This is an ordinary work. God doesn't see at all. God only sees whatever work you do, how are you doing it? The two best karma yogis which I have come across very early in my life, very, very early, when I just joined law, and who continues to inspire me. One is the man, when I stayed in a small store when first came to Chennai. The man, he was young at that point of time, and a young Muslim. Now he should be 70 years old. One who used to iron my clothes every second day or third day. He has the impact which he has created me in my heart as a karma yogi. Nobody has. And the second was the barber who had done it to me 15, 20 years, till 15 years back in a place where I was living in Rajannapalaipuram. To them, work is worship. 7 days in a month, in a week, 365 days in a year. When he takes the iron box, whenever I cross his shop to go to reach my place of stay, I see him in the same posture. I've seen it. And the way the barber who did this job to me and to anybody else, with no anxiety, with no stress, with no anger, with no depression, he was enjoying it day in and day out. Day in and day out. That's why when my daughter got married in 2017, I somehow searched them. We could see the connects here and there, went and ensured that both are invited to attend the wedding because they've inspired me in my life. So each one will have such characters to motivate. Now, what is so specific or special about their work? So we said there are three components. What are those three components? The desire to work. 2, the actual execution of the work. And 3, the results of the work. You take any work in this world, it will fall under any one of these three categories. Now, what does scriptures tell you? You can do the work in 2 ways. Either of the 2 ways. With lot of desire in your heart, you go and then execute the work. So, pumping desire, pumping enthusiasm, and there is so much josh. You feel, I'm doing it so nicely. I want to do it perfectly. I need to excel myself. So you keep repeatedly saying, I must do it, and keep working on it. And also have in your thought, this should produce this result to me at any cost. Otherwise, I will consider my work as an unfit work. I should at any cost get this result. That is one way of doing a work, where pumping desire and the mind, the action point says, I am doing it and I'll do my best. And I want this result. This is one way to do. There is a second way to do. which is what both the person who was doing the laundry and the barber taught me 30 years back. They will open the shop dot. One opens it at 5:45, the other opens it at say around 8:30. Whether it is first day or the 100th day, every day will be the same for them. And they don't have any desire, nor a disinclination. They know that they are supposed to do this work. Therefore, they come and do that work. This is the job I have to do. So I've come here to do this job. So instead of desire pushing them to work, duty pushes them to work. First point. So you can do it with desire, or you can do it as a duty. Now in the second phase, they don't keep claiming a pride. See how I do my laundry every day. To every client who comes, see how I've done it. They don't claim any credit. The barber doesn't say, see, every time I cut, you have to praise me for at least half an hour. Only then I'll allow you to get out of my saloon. He doesn't say. He continues to duty effortlessly in spite of for whom they are doing. There is no sense that there is no ego in what they're doing. The easiest word all of us understand. They do it because they are supposed to do it. And 3, the end of the day, the work is over, they go back home. Everyday result. This is what my plan is. This is how my investments are going to be. This is how I'm going to plan. I want this much of return at any cost. If you don't find 10 fellows coming today, catch hold of 10 fellows, put them to the collar, bring them to the saloon. No desperation. I don't know how many have seen it in Collector Appeals office in our Nungampakam. I think that is again a Muslim gentleman, died, I think 7-8 years back. Anybody who has seen him will be envying him. His day will start around 12:30. He will buy some 4-5 kgs of raw groundnuts just outside as we come out of the exit gate to the right. And if the commissioner's gate, he will be to the left. He will start his day around 12:30. By 3 o'clock, he'll wind up. His 5 kgs or 10 kg, whatever groundnuts he brings, he would have roasted it, given it to those people for 50 paise, 1 rupee. It escalated year after year. At 3 o'clock, he will wind up and go home happily. Many of us would have seen, and I think they will vouch for this. So, see how they perform and see how we perform. Can we perform work like them? That's the question. You have to do it as a duty. You have to do it the way, the most desirable way of doing it, you should do it without a sense of attachment to it. And results are definitely not, especially for a lawyer. Your results are not known till order is signed. The best cases will be lost. And doubtful cases, you may even succeed. That does not happen in our life every day. You will go thumping to say this is going to be my best argument. It will not impress the judge suddenly. How many times we see this happening ups and downs in our career? So, especially for a lawyer, results are certainly not in our hands. So, the sense of desperation over results. So, what is, okay, all right, is fine. How are you going to know the experiencer? Keep repeating that question in your mind. All this is fine. How will I know the experience? Now they say the difference between the first model of work and the second model of work is, in the first model of work, it is also called karma or work. It keeps you more and more into bondage. Desire, activity, results. Results can be, if you are successful, you will shoot up. Come on, I've done it. If you fail, then anger, jealousy, every damn thing will start coming around you. So, it is the result, final result, which is not in our hands, with which we are concerned about. Are you saying, therefore, we should not work without results? No. Work towards the destination. We have to do that. But we can't be desperate on something on which we don't have a control over it. So, if you can do in the second model, duty, activity, and absolutely no expectation, slowly you will sync yourself with this, connect yourself with this universe, but not expect anything from that universe. Rather, you will renounce. It will take you to that. These two people, after 30 years, I go and see them, they are living the same way. No desperation. The happiness which they exhibit, I've not seen in any one of our faces at any point of time. Their faces glow. So, this, if you do it, they say, after all, have you not seen it? It will lead you to renounce whatever you are doing. You will do like a machine every day, day in and day out, without any stress, without any burden, without feeling fatigued. So renouncement is one quality which will open you to know who this. I'll tell you how. Renounce. Now, the best karma yogi we can see in our lives, in our daily lives, in all our families is every mother is a karma yogi. So every mother should get emancipated is one question. The only downside of a mother is she doesn't think of herself, but she certainly thinks of her people with care and love. And therefore, to that extent, she is bound. Her results are ultimately, the family should be fine, our people should be fine, our children should be fine. So that expectation makes a mother bound. Otherwise, how can they do the same routine for generations, for a millennia? So every mother has an ability to renounce because she doesn't think of herself. This is what it will take you to. Now, by performing bhakti, by offering prayers to a text, by reading a holy text or doing a puja to a form. See, why are we doing form worship? Why should you do form worship? It's one view. Why? Because when there are millions and millions of forms and names, and our minds get distracted to all this scattered, this mind has to be brought into a focus or a concentrating point. Therefore, some of the religions say, if you want to bring your mind to a focal point, bring it to a form you like and offer the prayer or chant the music or whatever it is, sloka, whatever it is, or read a text, whatever it is, in favor of that deity. This is all the purpose. And why we have multiple forms? Some like forms in an animal, some like full human form, some likes only divine form, some likes a form like Narasimha. Each one likes, some attitudes vary because our varieties, our needs, our preferences are multiple in nature. Therefore, we have multiple forms. That's all. So, by doing this, what do you gain? There again, God doesn't believe how long you prayed, or how much you prayed, or how much you gave for supporting the prayer. God is unconcerned about it. God sees. So there are two ways of praying. Saying that, see, I sit for 4 hours, and all the 4 hours, if you think of your case and sit before a date, no use. It's not going to bring your mind to focus. So sitting 4 hours, no good. Hey, I spent so much of money here in these activities. All right, that's good. That will bring you benefit. But has it brought focus into your mind? Because you're saying, I'm giving it. So, this prayer, how to offer it? Let's see 2 examples. One is from the Ramayana and another is Kannapar story. Let's take the case of Sabari. So, for offering prayer, you need not have to be affluent. You need not have to possess status. You need not be somebody in the society, because all this is only qua other individuals. God doesn't bother who you are. God is impressed only when you feel you can pray to Him with belief. You can be anybody. So, the story of Sabari in Ramayana, Sabari was an illiterate woman. And she was sweeping the floor, doing washing things. Whoever came there, a sadhu, she helped them for years together. When Rama landed there in Sabari's ashram, you must read the text, the dialogue and the discussion. Sabari and Rama were discussing about Atma. How is your penance? How is your tapas? Sabari did not say, hey Rama, I'm having blood pressure. I'm having headache. I'm having spinal pain, back injury. Please, I'm getting psychological stress. I'm getting angry. I'm getting BP. Never such conversation took place. Complete illiterate. And because of the presence of Rama, she was able to go to Swarga in the presence of Rama. Take the case of Kannappar. He was a hunter. Again, he did not go to school. He did not do doctorate. He did not amass wealth. His devotion was so great. He felt that the eyes have to be, it's bleeding and eyes. So he plucks his eyes and keeps one. And keeps a foot on the Shiva Linga and takes the next eye to put it. And how did he offer the worship of Abhisheka, having water in his mouth? Says the scriptures. So, God sees only the intent. Now, by doing it like Kannappar, or by doing it like Sabari, what will you get? You will get the attitude to surrender. Surrender to something which is unknown to you, but you have faith and belief. So, by doing work, it leads you to renouncement. By doing bhakti, it leads you to surrender. If you do it without attachment. Once you have these two qualities, the mind to renounce and the mind to surrender, then scriptures say you have actually fallen into the path of dharma. Then life takes you in its own course to teach you who the maker is. Because the mind will, when you do these two, the mind gets focused. It's able to get itself detached from this, but continue to do work, continue to pray, because that is your routine. That's what you're supposed to do without any expectation. Then you are called as a person following dharma. Now, when you do these two, then one particular style of philosophy says, once karma and bhakti is over, you cross that stage, either it will take you to the path of yoga or take you to the path of knowledge and make you know who this experience. That's a process. Now, if you don't do, we'll have to now connect it with our professional work again. See, if you don't do work, if we, all of us, without exception, if we are not doing work or offering, or else at least not disturbing anybody, if this does not go, instead, see, in both these things, what is common is it relieves you out of your selfishness. By doing work as a duty, you don't become selfish. A mother is never selfish. By performing bhakti to a superior form which you have not seen, purely on the faith and belief, it relieves you that selfishness. It leads you slowly to offer whatever you have in your own way. So, if you don't do, if we stop, if dharma gets stopped, if performance of dharma gets stopped, we do karma as sheer exploitation. I have to get it. And we don't believe in any existence, any God, any form, any belief. It's all me, my way, highway, and me alone. Two things get away. We lose our connect with our maker, because we are all thinking we are the body. So we will move more and more in that direction. So what happens? We may doing the same karma work as a lawyer, and we may be performing so many activities through donations and all everywhere with mind, ego in it, saying I am doing it. See, this temple is run only because of me, as though idol is starving for food unless you give some money. So that attitude, if it keeps increasing in a human being, then the same dharma, while saying what is adharma, tells this person becomes a greedy person in life. Greed. Mahabharata portrays Duryodhana all throughout that epic as one who epitomizes greed. And when we forget everything and see I am alone is important to me, I don't worry about the world. If I have to plunder this, I'll plunder it because it gives me happiness. It's serving my purpose. So when we slowly become, all of us without exception, when we slowly become greedy, slowly as more and more greedy, sure shot, we will get the support of things around us which will make us to work in a crooked way and in a cunning way. The character of Shakuni. They are a pair to demonstrate what can greed finally lead one into. Greed ultimately leads only to destruction. And today, what we were all thinking, we are running this world. All of us, without any exception in this, the entire human kingdom across the world thought it was running the world. And said we kept on exploiting nature. We kept on violating everything. Because human greed. And what has it given us finally? It has locked us all inside our houses for the past 70 days, 60 days. Nothing. Is anyone capable of stepping out of their house? This is what we see, destruction. See, it will come in slow forms. We have seen, after all, storms, rains, tornadoes. We have seen depressions. We have seen in Madras being swayed away by a wind, strong storms. All this we have seen. We have seen epidemics. We have seen a global financial crisis 12 years back in 2008. But we have not learned our lessons. We started growing more and more greedy after that. After each experience, we became more greedy. Landing us finally into this, what we call it, the global pandemic, clueless. See, there are several, some will call whether it's lab tested, it is all completely science. Oh, you find it out. Yeah, science, go ahead. Then the geopolitical space will, this is politics. That country has done this country, how to plan. Please do it. But as human beings, we should understand. We are the cause. See, I saw one particular reference. I'm not a scientist, therefore I can't authenticate it. One has written this virus, coronavirus weight is some several zeros, after that some 1. Dot, several zeros, 1. And if 2 million people are there who are affected by it as on date, if you multiply it, the total weight of coronavirus is 1 gram. It has shut 162 countries. Which science can explain it? Nobody can explain it. We can boast, our egos can say anything, that's okay. So, destruction is all possible because of greed. Now, why did we become greedy? All of us, without exception. We moved away from ideal role model capitalism into a globalization model. What is role model of capitalism? Today, every country is a capitalist country. They can say ideologically they are X, Y, Z. But in any scale, they are a capitalist country. When it is only capitalism which will intensify, which will give you progress. So what are the components of such capitalism? Fairness, intelligence, enterprise, hard work, and fair sharing. This is how any capitalist model worked. But we started to now transform this capitalism across the nation, pan world, and said that we'll have it as globalization. So globalization, in capital market, you work to your needs and increase the need in a gradual arithmetical process. Whereas in a globalization model, you don't work need-based, you create greed in every consumer. Every consumer should have everything under the earth. Therefore, what happens when this penetrates into societies, in the hearts of each individual, he becomes a consumer, an absolute 24/7 consumer. And his level of consumption becomes the identity for status. How are you identified today? How much you consume. Your reputation, your status, your wealth, your recognition, everything is how much you consume. Yeah, I went to 10 countries. I have global map is there. They have to find out a fresh country for me to go. I've gone. So this is what is now the order of the day. Because we opened up in the concept saying growth. What is this growth? Underlying factor, greed. Absolute greed. Now, what does it do? What happens? There are beautiful textbooks written by global authors on this subject. They call this, we are now suffering this pandemic in an external form because it affects our body. We have been suffering this pandemic from 2008 after the global meltdown. At a psychic level, what we call it, the psychology, the various authors call it with a name, anomie. A-N-O-M-I-E, anomie. Anomie is greed, more greed, most greed. These are the only three. There is no lower category at all. So what happens in a society? Let's take India. If every citizen, 1.30 crore citizen becomes, he wants everybody should have everything. That's the aspiration, which now becomes, the process. So 130 crores will push it into the society, the greed. Then that society will push it to the nation, and that will reach the governing setup, which irrespective of which government, irrespective of which country, any democratic nation is under tremendous pressure because of this greed, applied by every individual because he wants to consume more and more, create consumption. Therefore, these authors say large-scale corruption, large-scale scandals, large-scale exploitations of natural resources. Everything happens topsy-turvy, not the way it should happen. Because you have to satisfy that goal somehow. Because I have to say, people will respect me only when I possess X, Y, Z. Otherwise, people won't see me at all. Therefore, I should possess. You don't possess for the joy of possessing it. It doesn't give you happy. As you possess, you want the next. Because this is temporary, unless I go to the next scale. So when will you be happy? And with what will you be happy? At what point of time you will be happy? It's a never-ending process. So if you keep escalating this greed in life, each one of us, without exception, will become a Duryodhana. How? See, what are the qualities of Duryodhana? Crookedness. Hard as a rock. His heart is as hard as a rock. Completely hostile. Very, very less compassionate. And no faith over nature, God, nothing. No, nothing works to him. And if people, we will like to have only people around us who will praise us and who will misguide us. Say, hey, you're great. And anybody tries to give us an advice or shun that this is wrong, we'll throw him or her out of our system. So, a human being who is capable of renouncing, capable of surrendering through the same work which he is doing every day, becomes crooked, becomes hard, becomes hostile, becomes less compassionate, and doesn't want to hear any criticism from anybody. This is in sum substance what greed can do to each one of us. And this is what greed has bequeathed each one of us under the globalization era. See, there are 3 ways of enjoyment of whatever you possess. Little or more doesn't matter. There are 3 ways of enjoying life. Whatever you get, enjoy it and also share it. This we call it as sattvic enjoyment. 2, whatever you get, I may not have the mind to share it, but I want to enjoy it all by myself. You will be at least less harmful. You don't harm anybody. So it's called the Rajasic way of enjoyment. 3, come what may, whether he has or not, I'm not bothered. I should have it and I should alone have it. That they call it as the Tamasic way of enjoyment. So we have now all been in more or less in the 3rd category without exception. And that is why we have now met with a situation where we should ponder upon, see, you can, now I understand they're going to declare this as pandemic instead of pandemic, they're going to declare this as epidemic, which means it's also one of the diseases which will now be in the world. So we must know to adjust and live with it. It's going to be part of us. So you can't stay in your home. All of us can't stay in our homes all forever. We should now to find out a way how to go about it. So let medicine find its way. Let economies prepare whatever balance sheets they have to prepare and all their financials, all that. Let it, as we must recognize somewhere in the corner that something we have done wrong to nature. Somewhere in the corner. Therefore, it's time for us to think and ruminate these 2 months. Each one says, I have done something. So think about it. What you need to do to yourself, to your people, and also to the society. There is a way. Scriptures say there are 2 ways of a person to grow in life. As a successful person or as a great person. Both options are available to everybody. No gender bias, no caste bias, no religion bias, no bias at all. Everybody is entitled to be either successful or great. So what is the difference? See, a successful man stays in his success till such time somebody conquers him or her. So a more efficient person will one day overtake this individual and he or she becomes successful. So successful or being success, getting into successful mode is extremely relative and extremely temporary. As you stay there with all the insecurity, can I stay in number one this next week? Somebody will come and say, as per this global rating, this man has become third. Finished. That man's peace is lost. This is what success can do. On the other hand, what does a great person achieve and contribute? What is greatness of a person? They say you must essentially have 3 qualities for you to say that you are great. 1, you must believe not in your ego, but in something else. If you are a believer in God, call it God. If you're a believer in nature, call it nature. If you are a non-believer, say that, yeah, there is something which we don't have to be worried about, but respect it. So that is the preliminary. The more and more you are able to peel out the ego, the more and more we are going to be happy in life, because we will not get into this comparison trap. So the first quality they say is being in connect with. If you are blessed with a spiritual guru, best. You can, because he will be there to guide you constantly. So each system has a practice. So this is first point. The second, whatever you do in life, can you do it as an offering, a duty, and as a service to this universe? The equivalent expression they use is samarpana buddhi. The samarpana buddhi comes only when you renounce and surrender. When you offer, are you in a position to offer this as a service or as a duty to this universe? Because now that we saw in a broad way how we are connected with the universe, it is the same 5 Panchabhutas which is there in our body. And it's the same creator who is creating the universe and also us. So that's the second requirement. And third, most important, can you do something whatever you do, can you do for your own Atma Tripti, for your own satisfaction? I cited the barber example and the launderer's example. For somebody who can do it for 30, 40 years without getting tired and without getting feeling nobody comes and will somebody go and say, hey, you are the best man? Will you be, who is honoring them? Who is recognizing them? And they live happily. Because if you do work with with ability to renounce and surrender, it will make you happy, whatever work you do. Whatever work you do, it will make you happy. Now, if you do these 3 put together, then you will no longer be in the league called the successful people. You will go into the league called the great people. Same work, same as a lawyer. I'm not talking that you give up everything. That's all madness. Nobody says you should give up. It's a question of how do you apply your life principles. So they become great. Now ask a question. There are only 3 qualities: belief, ready to offer it as a service, and Atma Tripti or certain. Does it say you should be intelligent? Does it say you should be brilliant? Does it say you should be cunning and crooked? If you have these 3, then whatever is required for you to achieve that greatness, it will come automatically to you. That is how nature, we are interconnected with this universe. Try to possess these three. Don't try to possess anything else. Try to possess these three. They will graduate you where what you need this much of intelligence, that intelligence will come to you. Have you not seen when you go to the National Judicial Academy, when we talk with judges, so many narrate, so many, out of curiosity, I keep talking to them. Can you narrate some experience where you feel you have not, something has gone into you and done something? How many people have narrated? I start dictating. When I end up, I would have dictated something else than what I was thinking initially. I got drifted myself into that, and I found out that finding looks to be extraordinary than what I initially thought. How many of them have shared it? Each one of them, each one of us will get such experience in life. That's the capability life can give to us. We don't have to give anything to life other than what we are supposed to do with a Samarpana Buddhi. Now, see the case of Dr. Abdul Kalam. You apply these three principles to Dr. Abdul Kalam. Will he not fit into the scheme? 2 hours before his death, he was complimenting one of the security men who from Guwahati airport to Shillong in the convoy car was standing to protect him. He says, the moment he got down, he went there and spoke to him. Are you all right? Is your leg paining? 1 hour before death or 2 hours before death. He was compassionate because he was not greedy. Simple. Take the case of Asim Premji. How many of you know? I don't know. He was holding 74% of Wipro's share, one family of two sons, wife and 2 sons, 74%, of which 67% has been bequeathed to a trust. So this model, Bill Gates was stunned, it seems, because he is also running a foundation. But he said, you are the first man in the world where the front end will be business and the proceeds of business will go to charity without going through you. So 67% of the share is held by a trust. So every dividend, every share value, everything goes there, and 10,000 crores, 20,000 crores, 30,000 crores, schools, technically, it's all getting funded. One single man. He wrote a letter, you can go and download in any site, and to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Is one single statement. Anything which a man earns as reasonable can be retained with him. The rest should all be held in trust. He is not the owner. If you own everything you earn, everything you possess, no, this is mine, this is mine, crave for it, you will become hard, you will become crooked, you will become less compassionate. Now, take our own field. See the name Palkiwala. How many lawyers all over the world, people celebrate 100 years, centenary. This year is centenary of Nani Palkiwala ji. How many has reached that scale? Because he always thought about the nation and how to save and protect the nation through the constitutional process. Take the case of our Parasaran sir. At 93, for 70 years, he has been doing Ramayana Parayana in his life, in his home, every day, without a fail. And he was able to finally defend the cause of Ram. And in his felicitation speech, he says, that day where the verdict came, 8:30 in the night, 30 or 40 monkeys in Delhi in his Greater Kailash house, night 8:30, they were all rejoicing over the terrace. See the scale where he has finally glided into. Citing all this as example for great people. You apply these 3 qualities in them. Over a period of time, they would have graduated to these 3 qualities without a fail. Otherwise, they can't stay there. So, this is in short. So, what are we supposed to do post-COVID? And finally, one example. I always love because Mahabharata is one epic. Day in and day out, we can apply. As lawyers, as young lawyers, everybody should read Mahabharata. Everybody should read. If you don't have time, it is in all the languages. Watch 269 episodes, Meendum Mahabharatam. In all languages, it is there. In fact, what is explained in Dharma, you go and find a definition of Dharma, each one gives it in different way. Karna meets Krishna for the first time and requests Krishna, can you explain Dharma to me? And Krishna says, Dharma is like a water. When it flows over the mountains don't take control or possession over it. They allow it to drift. And the water finally goes and merges with the ocean. This is the Dharma of water. Then Karna asks, I don't understand this. Is this happening because of the strength of the ocean or because of the incapacity of the mountain? For which Krishna replies, the river flows ultimately to join and merge with the ocean and become part of the ocean. Each one of us, that's what Supreme Court says, religion is something. Each one of us should go back and trace ourselves and see. So it's an opportunity for a human birth, whether we can merge as much as possible. Everything can't happen in one birth. And don't worry, Gita says, wherever you have left, you will continue the next birth from where you have left. There is a ITC credit there available to all of us without any exception. So to conclude, 2 more minutes. When 15 years back, when one foreigner came to Sringeri and to have a darshan of our Guru, it's a recorded video, it's there. He asked 2 questions. Swami, can you please tell, when can a human being be very happy? And when can this world be at peace? For which our Guru replied, when world practices Dharma, then world will be in order. How do you identify that world is practicing in Dharma? He says, if there is a decline in Dharma, the first indication, whether this applies to an individual, it applies to a family, it applies to the universe, it applies to the society, everything, same formula. If Dharma declines in particular place or in the whole world, the first symptom will be world will become aggressive. This decline of Dharma will first show this. If we don't learn the lessons and still pursue the same path, there will be further decline of Dharma, which will lead to more and more violence. If we still don't learn our lessons, then there will be further decline of Dharma, which will culminate in destruction. Which is what has happened now to all of us. It is very unfortunate. In our own life cycle, we have seen all the 3. So, I'm making one humble request to my youngsters, young boys and girls. You are the future. What can we do post-COVID? I'm making one humble request to both the boys and girls. You're all like our children. Every young man should know to respect women. It is precondition. Please respect women. And every girl, try to understand and don't lose your womanly qualities. And why do you assume the role of a manly quality? Why do you wear the mantle of a manly quality? Because the man provokes you to say, you don't know this, you don't know that, I can do this. Then you say, I can do this also. So, if man starts to respect, the provocation will come down. And if a woman, both of you are born to achieve, you achieve everything in this world which you want to, using your own qualities and attitudes. Then friction will be far less. That'll be a climb down in friction. I only wish the matrimonial courts get lesser and lesser of work post-COVID. None of you boys and girls should commit such blunders in life. It's a request. Please understand and respect each other. Now, what we all as human race can do to the society, I once again request each one of us, let us throw 3 H's out of our life permanently. Post-COVID, let that be a commitment to each one of us. We will not hurt fellow human beings. We will not humiliate fellow human beings. And we will not hate fellow human beings. The world has been dumped with hatred all over the world, without any exception. And that's where it has now led us into. So we will give these 3 H out and let us practice 1 H as a society, as human race. Let us be homogeneous together. I thank Jay. He was the one who suggested I should speak on it. I thank Nataraj. I thank Hemalata. I thank all my office friends. And I thank all my well-wishers who are here to listen to this. And let's pray that all of us live happily and all of us live in peace. And may peace get restored soon to this universe. Namaste.
Thank you very much, sir, for your inspiring words for all of us, especially the youngsters, and your ending words, remove the 3 H's of the world so that we make a world a better place to live in. Thank you really, sir. I mean, this session was a really very, very inspiring session, and it teaches the importance of Dharma. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, so the floor is open for the participants. If anyone wants to add something or ask something about whatever sir has taught us today, you can raise your hands in the app, and then, or you can just drop a message. I see a first question from Maithili ma'am.
Oh, namaste, Maithili. How are you?
1 minute, I'll just unmute her.
Yeah.
Maithili ma'am.
Very, 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 very inspiring speech from Kannan.
Oh, thank you.
But I'd like to know if you are away from grade, where will be the say like grade and enthusiasm? Can you differentiate?
Yeah.
Like
It is like, in fact, a very leading politician who was a superstar in film and in Andhra Pradesh taught me this lesson. He told me the difference between confidence and arrogance. We should be confident, but we should not be arrogant. Ego dominates in arrogance. Similarly, you can be nowhere it says you should not earn wealth. Nowhere. No religion prohibits earning wealth. But assuming what is earned should remain only with you or belongs only to you produces the danger. I'm talking, it is not necessarily whether it's wealth. See, each one is gifted with some. Some will be in power. Some will be in affluence. Some will be in a position to put contacts in right places. Each one has a strength. Now, that strength is not a disadvantage. But using it more and more for your own purpose, excluding to serve. See, take anything in this universe. Does not a plant give us fruits and flowers? Does not cow give us milk? Does not everyone labor something to give something to somebody else? So, the attitude to renounce, if it is there, you can be very enthusiastic and
Thank
go
you.
to the do whatever you want to do. But that
Sure.
coupled with
Sure. Thank you, Kannan.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Amuda. Ma'am, you can
Hello.
ask your question.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Namaste, Amuda.
How are you, sir?
Fine.
Sir, very nice presentation. I'm very happy about it, sir. And only one doubt which I have always in my mind, sir. Shall I share with you?
Please.
Sir, most of the people in our days, that is not in the Z generation. Now the people are doing what they are liking. But in earlier, the people, they are forced to do some job or what, whether they like it or not, they have to do. So whether actually in our topic, the way to God through profession, like the people, those who are not willing to do the job, but under compulsion, they're doing some job. So how do they reach the God or whatever the supreme power?
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. That's the question.
In fact, no, this question is not sometime. This question is always all time. See,
thank you, sir.
I cited the example of a barber and a launderer only for that purpose. See, one thing, it is like a gift. Some are blessed to do what they want to do. Some are blessed that way. Some get into something which over a period of time they like to do. Some do something which they don't like to do.
Yes, sir.
If you have an option for migration, then you should explore that process. But suppose you don't have an option for migration, that is the test for you to turn Godward. If you believe in God, I'm not talking people who don't believe. People who don't believe will say, I'll retaliate, I'll do something. Let them say whatever. That's a way. Nothing, see, in a democratic society, nothing is right, nothing is wrong. Sense of rights and wrongs is all very perception. But if you are a believer and wants to grow in that path, what is offered to you, if you start doing it with the second formula, not applying your ego or your mind into it, over a period of time, you will reach the perfection and the happiness which I cited from the barber and the launderer. Each one of us can get it. Have no exceptions. See, do you think if you have gone and interviewed them, suppose they have been given a better job, they will say that I would have certainly explored that possible. Do you think they would not have said so? But they don't run that regret of not having done something else. If you have an option, migrate. If not, you must take it as that's the will and work on it dispassionately. That will be my advice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So one question from Mr. Venkat.
Yes.
Mr. Venkat.
Hi, yeah.
Namaste.
Sir, namaste, sir.
Yes, please.
My father used to say your spiritual quest will start later in your life, because I was somewhat not worshipping and all that. Then I enrolled myself in Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram for taking certain lessons. So I happened to, I was blessed to listen to your lecture on scope of faith and religion on constitutional basis. There you interpreted from Yoga, Patanjali Yoga Sutra and all that. I'm also doing MSc in yoga for human excellence, apart from being an advocate. So I would like to know a personal question. Who is your yoga guru, sir?
No, I am not into yoga. Each one has
Yes.
a path. I'm right now practicing whatever little I know in karma and bhakti. And my spiritual guru is my Jagadguru of Shringeri. He is guiding me into Jnana Marga. So that's as I said, there are 4 buckets. Bhakti and karma are preliminary. It will cleanse your mind, focus your mind, steady your mind, and then for you to take up the next launch of reaching to the maker. Reaching to the maker can happen either through the process of yoga or through the process of knowledge. So everyone need not go only through yoga route. That's available still. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Always.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else has to add something to whatever sir has said? Satish Sundar sir has sent a Bhagavad Gita verse. It's in the chat box.
Very good.
Bhagavad Gita in chapter 13, verses 24 and 25 says thus, Arjuna, some discover divine through meditation, others through logic and analysis, others through activity, and still others are introduced to it by listening to others. All are able to overcome the fear of mortality. He just wanted me to share.
Sure. See, there are different path of contemplation, path of concentration. So, he is absolutely right. And what we are supposed to do at this point of time is work. We cannot be going and meditating and leaving our families at this point of time. So you can see God in work and through worship. These two W's, work and worship. That will take you wherever it has to take to you. Have no doubts about it. Yes.
Thank you very much. I will just unmute Srinivas sir.
Yes. Or APS, sir. Okay.
Yes.
Namaste, APS.
Yes, sir. Namaste, sir. A very emotional philosophical lesson, sir, today. At least in some point of time, everybody will turn to this margam, we can say. So it is good to turn at the earliest possible time. Of course, all the religions tells about right way and righteous way. We can say, find many quotes in Bible itself.
Correct.
You quoted the example of Dr. Abdul Kalam and Asim Premji, how much he donated. That's what Valloor says. Variyar kundrivede igai matravellam puriyadirpa neeradodithu. That means we have to give to people those who cannot give back to us. That's the true kind of offering. So if we expect something from others, then you do something, then it is not the kind of offering. So that's a very good lesson from today, sir. I think we have to, it's difficult to walk in the righteous way. Everybody, most of us will follow the right way and lead success. There is no doubt on that. It's difficult to go in the righteous way and to achieve the greatness. So you have to follow your advices, and I hope your guidance will help us to travel in the righteous way and to stand as a great man rather than a successful man. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, APS sir, and thank you very much once again, Venkatraman sir, for this session. So to all the participants, thanks for joining us. This session